Unlike live-action filmmaking, the freedom of animation allows storytellers to literally take their shows anywhere. Everything from the vibrant landscape of Neo-Tokyo to Viking civilizations, and even a steampunk fantasy medieval world inspired by a real German town with hints of World War II, are all real settings in some of the most popular anime. But despite all of that creative freedom, there's one thing that anime notoriously cannot do: horror. You'd think that the overwhelming freedom of anime would result in some incredibly creative horror shows, but while there are many good horror anime out there that are good because of their stories, it's incredibly rare for an anime to actually feel scary. At least, that's what many of us thought, until The Summer Hikaru Died came out. There's a lot to love about the series. The animation is incredible. The sound design perfectly brings the noises and sound effects from the manga to life. And the show did a great job of rearranging the chronology to fit the episodic medium of anime. But there's one thing that The Summer Hikaru Died does better than almost every other anime. It actually understands horror. Obviously, spoilers ahead. I believe there are two reasons why The Summer Hikaru Died is so effective as a horror series. First, there's the way it handles expectations. And second is the way it interprets horror. Both are incredibly important in their own right, and would individually be strong enough elements to make any anime a good horror series. But the way in which The Summer Hikaru Died blends them both together is masterful, and it's why the show actually feels scary. I've put expectations as the first point, not because I think it's the most important, but because it's the very first thing that the show addresses. The opening scene shows Yoshiki and Hikaru sitting in front of a shop, with Yoshiki confronting his friend about whether he's real or not. Given the premise of the show, that of a teenage boy being taken over by a potentially evil entity, many lesser anime would use that to create drama in a more conventional way. The easiest way to turn that into a dramatic story would be for Hikaru not to reveal his identity, and for Yoshiki to have to work it out. The quote-unquote horror would then come from the creepy moments of the fake Hikaru teasing his true identity, with a dramatic and gory big reveal at the end. We expect the story to go that way because it's so cliché. But The Summer Hikaru Died looks at that path and immediately decides to go elsewhere. His identity is revealed in the very first scene, as we see that the real Hikaru died in the mountains, and the new one is some unknown creature. As a result, our expectations are then shattered. It's impressive by itself how the show subverts convention, but it's also one of the main reasons why the series works so well as a horror story. If that conventional plotline is a well-worn pavement, the road Hikaru takes is, to quote Robert Frost, the one less travelled. The most exciting thing about the road less travelled is that you have no idea where it leads, or what the journey will be like. The Summer Hikaru Died knows this, and uses it to its full advantage. Because we have no roadmap of conventions or tropes to follow, we have no idea what's going to happen next. Every time we expect some horror cliché, the story changes pace and focuses on a dramatic plot beat. This interconnectivity between genres is definitely The Summer Hikaru Died's biggest strength. At the core of the story is Yoshiki coming to terms with his own grief, while Hikaru presents a philosophical question that's the human equivalent of the ship of Theseus. The moments of horror are interspersed with these more dramatic scenes, and even some light-hearted, slice-of-life and comedic moments. To some, those moments might feel like they break for tension, but they're actually one of the main methods the show uses to evoke horror. Regarding its horror plot, the series completely subverts expectations, but its comedic and light-hearted moments feel very conventional and familiar to long-time anime fans. Because of this, they lull us into a false sense of security. Scenes like Yoshiki playing with the hamster, or Maki's rap feel out of place in such a dark anime. That sudden shift in tone already feels strange, but these lighter scenes go on for just long enough to get us to drop our guard. Then, when we're least expecting it, the series jumps right back into the horror, and the effect is greatly multiplied. That's far from the only way the show gets us to drop our guards with false expectations. Kids are a common trope in horror. The innocence of children is often flipped to creep you out, with films like The Omen and The Exorcist being prime examples. But The Summer Hikaru Died doesn't do that. Instead, it uses its young protagonists and characters to make us feel more comfortable. Due to the average audience age of anime in Japan, most anime protagonists tend to be teenagers to make the stories more relatable. By leaning into this trope, those lighter moments and the more casual drama feel like they have lower stakes. So when the horror kicks in, it feels even more terrifying. It's one thing for a show to subvert expectations, but the way in which Summer Hikaru Died does this also leads into the show's second major strength, and the defining factor that sets it apart from other horror anime. Horror is a very broad classification of genre. After all, there are countless subgenres within that umbrella term. The Summer Hikaru Died falls into the category of psychological horror, with some moments of body horror thrown in. Psychological horror isn't better nor worse than other subgenres. It's just different, with different methods of evoking emotions, and a different emotional range that it's trying to evoke. Slashers and mainstream horror movies like to use jump scares as a cheap and easy way to elicit fear. But jump scares don't really work in anime. Because it's animated, horror anime have to work twice as hard to maintain the suspension of disbelief and immerse us in the story. As a result, jump scares just don't have the same effect, because it's harder to convince us that they're real. But The Summer Hikaru Died isn't interested in creating quick and easy scares that come and go. Instead, it maintains a constant, steady sense of unease across its 12 episodes. It's not so much fear that the series evokes, but dread and terror. The main way the series elicits these feelings from the viewer is from what I mentioned earlier, being unpredictable. The entire season is packed full of moments and scenes that keep you guessing, not just about where the plot will go, but about what will appear on screen next. One of my favourite examples comes from episode 5, where Yoshiki describes what the fake Hikaru feels like. After saying it's like raw chicken, the editor jump cuts to an image of real raw chicken, along with a disgusting sound effect. You could argue that the moment is trying to be comedic, but the lighting of the photo and the noise that accompanies it feel really uncomfortable. The sudden jump from animation to live action also takes a moment to get used to, throwing the audience off. But that's just one of many, many examples. The Summer Hikaru Died uses all the filmmaking tools at its disposal to make you feel uncomfortable. The sound design is overwhelming, incorporating the cicadas into its score and its rises to build tension. The cicadas are also ever present and unrelenting, and it doesn't give you a moment to breathe. The show also uses several other random jump cuts and splices in single frames to catch you off guard and create a sense of tension that feels like it comes from nowhere. Some of these cuts simply jump to other settings, while others include some of the impurities, overwhelming you with the fact that they are ever present in the town. There are even smaller details, like the constant shifts in aspect ratios. Films shot in multiple formats change aspect ratios all the time, but with The Summer Hikaru Died it's frequent, and sometimes it's completely at random. Then there are the moments where the show deploys handheld shots to create an almost unnoticeable feeling of unease when compared to the comfort of a static camera. Even the cinematography feels unnerving. The frequent contrast between light and dark in every shot makes it feel like the show's bright summer setting is constantly at odds with the dark nature of its story. But any horror story can throw in these random moments to catch you off guard. It's how and why The Summer Hikaru Died uses them that exemplifies its mastery of the genre. The randomness and unpredictability aren't just cheap tricks. They all compile together to create a single feeling in the viewer. Overwhelming exhaustion. The Summer Hikaru Died is a tough watch because of how heavy the atmosphere of the series feels. That tense atmosphere is created by those unpredictable moments. We're constantly on guard, waiting for something strange or unnerving to happen, as the series uses its unpredictability to build tension. That tension is never released through jump scares like most horror movies. Instead, it dissipates as the series shifts to one of the lighter moments. Then, when we finally feel relaxed, it hits us over the head with that tension once again. This technique isn't anything new. Filmmakers have been using it for decades, with Stanley Kubrick's The Shining being one of the best examples. Even more recent films like Midsummer use it to great effect to make the film feel like a horror story, even without using any of the other conventions of the genre. Speaking of Midsummer, the bright summer setting of The Summer Hikaru Died is also another way in which the show gets us to drop our guard, as most conventional horror stories use darkness as an easy way of preying on the very common fear of the dark. Again, that brightness then becomes unsettling thanks to the harsh cinematography. Once those small details are established, and the overwhelming atmosphere is in place, the series can then effectively use the more conventional horror tropes. The Summer Hikaru Died might be the only anime that's ever effectively made a jump scare work on me. Not only that, but the expressly creepy moments, like the visitor to Yoshiki's school, and the other impurities, actually made me feel unnerved and slightly scared because of those smaller details. Part of the reason that most horror anime fail is that, outside of the limitations of anime, they ignore the importance of atmosphere and rush straight towards direct horror. It's partly why all the Junji Ito adaptations have failed. The mangas are scary because we, as the reader, have to actively engage with the story and the horror as we read. But watching anime is a more passive experience, as we simply have to sit there and watch. So, when shows like Uzumaki or Junji Ito Maniac try to rush straight into body horror, it just falls flat. But when The Summer Hikaru Died does it, we actually feel grossed out by body horror happening to an animated character, because it has laid the uncomfortable groundwork and immersed us in the atmosphere first. The Summer Hikaru Died is easily the scariest anime I've ever seen, which feels odd to say because it's not overtly scary, it just tricks you into thinking it is. Either way, The Summer Hikaru Died might be a turning point for the genre, as other anime can use it as a blueprint for effective animated horror. But whether that happens or not, I know this show will stay with me for a long time. Thank you for staying to the end of the video. The moment the anime was announced, I knew it was a topic I'd want to dive into. I was already a big fan of the manga, and felt that similar sense of dread when I read it. But I never expected the anime to be this effective. And these are just the details and techniques that I noticed. There are probably tons more that are hiding in plain sight. If you can think of any, let me know in the comments below. I plan on rewatching the series soon, so it'll be fun to do so while noticing the elements that made other people feel scared and tense. It's also nice to take a break from my Moments of Brilliance series. If you haven't checked that out, you can find my most recent video here, which breaks down the animation in Freeren. Or, if you like learning about the techniques that make anime impactful and effective, why not check out my first video on the sound design of Fire Force? Either way, thank you.